Hey guys, happy Sunday. We're in John chapter 11 today, and we're going to be reading about Jesus raising his friend Lazarus back to life and what this means for us. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sister sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "The sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. We can tell from the context that Jesus was a close friend to this family. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." It's so interesting because it says Jesus loved them. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed 2 more days. You would think that that would read, Jesus loved him, so he rushed to go heal him. But Jesus has plans that we, at this point, can't even fathom. 2 days later, he says, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." I think what Jesus is trying to say is that his time has not yet come to be killed, and he knows when his time will be, and he's not afraid of going there right now because he knows that it's not his time yet, and it's still daylight for him in this metaphorical way, and he has work to do of performing miracles and saving lives and teaching people. After he said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." So Jesus knows something that they don't, which is that Lazarus has passed away. In the 2 days that they've stayed, Lazarus's sickness overtook him and he passed. And Jesus is saying, for your sake, I'm glad I was not there. This is because the miracle of healing someone who's sick, which he's done several times at this point, is less incredible than raising a dead person back to life. And he plans to show them that some things are absolutely impossible, but not with God. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Mary heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. When Martha heard, Mary stayed home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." So Jesus says, "Your brother will rise again." I think Martha in this moment is taking it as the comfort that we give, similar to the comfort we give people when a loved one passes. We say, "You're going to see them again," or "I believe they're in a better place." Similar to that comfort, Martha thinks that Jesus is just saying, "Your brother will rise again. He will be with me in heaven." And he's actually saying, I really am going to raise your brother back to life. So Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." I love this part because we know that it's a term of endearment she uses when she says the teacher is here, because The rabbis at the time refused to teach women, and Jesus was so unlike any of them, and he was so happy to teach women and to preach to women and to be with them and to love them and to treat them as equal. And for these women, it was probably such a sweetness that Jesus was so kind and nurturing to them and didn't turn them away. So it's just endearing that she says the teacher is here, that they even refer to him as that. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. The Jews back in these times, it was customary for them to surround each other and love on each other and comfort each other and to mourn together when the loss of a loved one died for somebody. They would just surround each other and mourn with them. And I think it's so beautiful. And they weren't afraid of sadness. They weren't afraid of shedding a tear. And as we'll see in a second, neither was Jesus. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Jesus here is not crying out of desperation or hopelessness, not at all. He is crying over genuine empathy and compassion as he looks around and he sees his friends and he also sees strangers. I mean, nobody's really a stranger to Jesus, but he sees these other Jews mourning and hurting, and our pain breaks Jesus's heart. We see that here. He knows what he's going to do and he's still going to do it, but in that moment he weeps. An old pastor of mine, Judah Smith, said something. He spoke on this chapter and he said something beautiful that I love. He says, "Who is this God who lives outside of time and yet can grieve within it?" Jesus knew that Lazarus was going to be back to life and everyone would be overjoyed and happy, but still he grieves in time with us, even knowing that his goodness is going to come out of it. Then the Jews, seeing him weeping, said, "See how he loved him?" They think he's crying out of sadness, of like just desperation that he's gone. But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been in there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." So he pauses and he gives glory to God the Father for what's about to happen. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him, but some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. So they called together all the elders. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." So now they're afraid of the power that they have, of Jesus taking their power away. Then one of them, named Cephas, who was a high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." He did not say this on his own, but as a high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. So he doesn't even understand what he's doing, but he is prophesying about Jesus's death. And not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So just as we read yesterday in the story of the Good Shepherd, Jesus plans on saving not only the Jewish people, not only the Israelite nation, but people all over. And that's just what it's saying here. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him. I love this story. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and I think it's easy for us to read that story and think, well, this is the only time so far in the story that Jesus actually brought someone from death back to life. And maybe you've experienced the loss of a loved one, and it's hard for you to hear, because why would he raise one person back to life and not another? Yes, he raised Lazarus back to life to show his power, but Jesus's plans are not to bring us all back to life and extend our earthly lives. Our lives here on earth are full of pain and suffering and tragedy and heartbreak and evil. Jesus does plan on raising us up to a new life, and he comes to offer us all the opportunity to spend eternity with him, with the Father in paradise. So he plans on raising us all from the death that we're subject to because of our sinful natures into an eternal life with God in heaven that's just so much greater than extending our lives here and giving us more time. That's not the point. And although it's really hard to lose somebody, we should rejoice knowing that Jesus has offered all of us the opportunity to be raised and spend eternity with him. And that's the best news. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow for chapter 12.